Hey everybody, welcome to All the Fanfare. My name is Eric Pierce. Today we're talking about something near and dear to my heart, the state of Star Wars, which could just as easily be called WTF Star Wars because the vibes are all over the place. They're not necessarily great, but I think there's always hope. If Star Wars has taught us anything, that's that there's always hope. Joining me today is my friend Jeff from the Death Star Human Resources Department newsletter, my favorite read every Friday, diving into all things Star Wars past, present, and future. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot, Eric. It's certainly glad to be here. Certainly glad to finally talk to you. I know we've talked about this for a while.
We have, and this felt like a good topic to pull you into on the pod because I think, the vibes around Star Wars are not, not the best. I think for a while they've been iffy depending on how you view the sequel trilogy, which I tend to view as a net positive. But there's been projects that have been hit or miss. We'll just say it that way. But of late, it feels like the vibes are especially, I don't want to say dire, but they're just not great. And so we've had rumors about Kathleen Kennedy possibly moving on. They walked that back, but at the same time, it sounds like it's something that's in the air. Who's the heir apparent? Is it Filoni? Is it Favreau? Is it someone else? Don't know. I heard a rumor last month that Disney's considering moving on from Star Wars or quietly trying to sell Star Wars, which blows my mind. And it is just a rumor on the internet, but at the same time, I think given the state of Star Wars, I think that kind of lends credence to that being a possibility. And in addition, and part of the reason I think that they're maybe considering selling it is it feels like Star Wars has no direction. I don't know. So I'm as enmeshed in this as pretty much anyone next to Jeff probably. And I don't even know where this thing's going. Like they've got all these projects that have been announced that we have seen, neither hide or hair of. We haven't had a movie in 6 years, and the next one's going to be continuation of something that started on Disney Plus. And it just feels like as a fan, I just don't even know like what are we even doing here anymore? Like it feels like we're just kind of coasting on nostalgia fumes and we're not really going anywhere. And I don't feel like the people in charge really have a sense of what they want to do with Star Wars either. So I just did a bit of talking there. Jeff, I'd love to just get your take on like how do you feel about Star Wars like today, 2025?
I was thinking about this earlier today, and I was trying to think of like what the word would be to kind of the overall feeling, and I think it's uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably the best way to describe it. And I was thinking about this too. I was like, we should have waited and done this in like 2 weeks after Celebration. That was my first thought. I was like, I mean, maybe we can reconvene in a few weeks and see what gets announced and what's new, what's old, what's not. But it just feels like, I think directionless is a good way to put it as well. Like they can't decide, do we want to focus on movies? Do we want to focus on TV shows? We have this High Republic out there. Do we want to do something with that?
Yep.
So yeah, I think directionless is good. I think one thing that was funny as you were talking, I thought of, to say, oh my God, it's been 6 years since a Star Wars movie. Like, that's a lifetime. And, I think you and I are pretty similar in age where it's, I was too young to see the original trilogy in the theaters.
Mm-hmm.
But, by the time the prequels came out, I was already like a full-formed, adult or close to an adult at 19, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like I had my opinion on Star Wars and the original trilogy is a trilogy for me. So I'm too old to be a prequel kid. So it's kind of a weird time because, I think for people our age before the prequels, it was like, are we ever going to get another Star Wars movie? And then, Revenge of the Sith happened. Oh, is this it?
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of funny how getting a movie a year for 5 years, just has warped our expectations.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think those of us who lived, I refer to that the period between Return of the Jedi and just the rumors of the new prequel as I refer to that as the dark times because like there was a period where Star Wars was like They were no longer making movies. You couldn't even go to the store and buy toys anymore. Star Wars just like stopped existing for like a good sense or a good size of the population, except for those like you and me who still held the torch for it and or carried the torch. And those were the dark times. And it was like, are we ever going to get new Star Wars? And you just kind of lived on rumors.
Right.
So this definitely is not that. Like you said, it's almost like an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I kind of there was something that has been lost. Like Star Wars was special because it was limited, and I feel like we did lose some of that when we started getting too much of it. I mean, that's just it's like too much of a good thing, right? But
I think I was gonna say I think you're absolutely right about that. I have a piece that I've kind of got in my drafts folder, and it's titled the Homer Simpson Donuts Theory of Star Wars, like from the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, where he goes to hell and he's like, they're just eating the donuts constantly, and it's like if that's all you get, is it really special? And I think there's a good balance to be had between not getting anything where you have to subsist on the expanded universe books and comic books versus an embarrassment of riches is a great way to put it. I mean, if you told a Star Wars fan in 1985 that you're going to be able to watch Star Wars on demand on your TV, plus there would be 5 new movies in 5 years, like they would lock you up. They'd think you're crazy.
Yep.
But it's like, I don't know. I mean, I know you and I are sports fans as well. One of the theories you always hear about expansion teams is the quality of play goes down the more teams you add because, players that might not have been able to make the majors previously now are on the majors to fill out the roster. And it's kind of like that, as if you have so much of it, not everything is going to be a home run. Not everything is a home run in Star Wars, period, even in the old days. But, there's almost a feeling of like throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think they really do that with the announcements. It's like, somebody goes up to Dave Filoni and says, "Hey, I want to do 8 episodes about a gonk droid." All right, we're green lighting it. Just, call me when you get the script written. And I mean, would I watch 8 episodes about a gonk droid? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But it almost feels like maybe they should be a little more picky and choosy about what they're doing. I don't know. Like, I mean, like we said, uncertainty is kind of the name of it here.
Yeah, it is hard to just kind of diagnose it like as a fan from the sidelines because, like to your point, it feels like it's hard because I don't want to denigrate Kathleen Kennedy just because she's Kathleen Kennedy, and there's definitely part of what complicates this whole narrative is that there's this whole layer of misogyny anytime like women are involved with Star Wars, and
100%.
that hurts because you have bad faith actors who are like who make it difficult to just say, yeah, Kathleen's not doing a very good job, and it's not because she's not a woman. I think it's because she's not a creative person. Like that was never her strong suit. She was a producer, and now she's trying to make she's basically meant to be the creative lead of Lucasfilm. And I think to your point about it feels like they're throwing things against the wall to see what sticks. I think that's part of because she doesn't have the story bones, the George Lucas, the Dave Filoni, the Jon Favreau ability to look at things from a story perspective and see like what makes the most sense. And the other thing that makes it complicated, I think, is she's trying to serve multiple demographics now because there's the people who love Star Wars because they grew up on it, whether it's the original trilogy or the prequels. And then she also is trying to grow the pie with the new fans and trying to expand even what Star Wars means, which is why you get something like The Acolyte, which is really pushes the boundaries on what Star Wars has traditionally looked like and been and starred and focused on. And I think that's all positive. But at the same time, I feel like the lack of direction has been because of maybe a gap with her skill set or something. And again, I hate saying that because it depending on who's saying it, some people are just gonna piss on her because she's a woman. And I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, man, I feel like we need someone in the driver's seat that has more experience or a background in story structure and that kind of thing. versus she, like, her skills are more as a producer. And I don't
Yeah.
know, but that's just kind of how I'm reading the tea leaves and just looking at what we've gotten. And to your point, like, it's become a meme now how many projects they've announced that have gone nowhere. So
I will say, in that defense, because I'm the one who brought up throwing it at the wall, I was actually looking at it the other day, and it does feel like, they announce stuff and then you never hear from it. But, there was that big, I don't remember if it was like 2020, 2021. I don't know. Whenever they did that big announcement in D23, when you had like the Acolyte and
Mhm.
Andor, and when all of those were announced, I think there were 8 or 9. And I went back
Yeah.
and looked, and I think the only things that have not made it were Droids, which was supposed to be an animated series, which I think they announced and like nobody's ever heard another word about.
Mhm.
And then, Rangers of the New Republic, which, depending on how you want to view it, Gina, whatever her name is, Cara Dune,
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
either a
yeah.
victim of the culture, is either a culture warrior who's a free speech fighter, or she's a victim of the woke mob, depending on how you look at it. And I think it seems likely that at least some of the Rangers storylines made it into season 3 of Mando, or at least some of the general ideas of it. But
Yeah.
I think everything else, and I don't have that list in front of me, I've looked at it somewhat recently, like everything else actually made it to the screen. Um, I think right now it's the movies that, they've done this big pivot from, I think the only streaming live action show we're still waiting on is Ahsoka. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
season
Andor, but
2.
that's in a couple days,
Yeah.
a couple weeks. But I think after Ahsoka season 2, off the top of my head, I don't think there's anything
Yeah.
scheduled. So,
Yeah, and
they're doing
yeah.
this big pivot to movies now. So you've got all these movies out there, that are just kind of floating in the ether in various stages of announcement to writing to, you know, I guess I think Mando and Grogu is done shooting. So it's easy to say, oh yeah, they're just throwing stuff out there. What I said 5 minutes ago, and now I'm changing my tune. That is actually, I think they have a pretty good track record of getting stuff to completion, and that could be, because you have somebody who is a producer in charge versus, you know, would they have the same success if Dave Filoni, the storyteller, was getting stuff to finish? So,
Mhm.
and I think the other thing, like you touched on, is there is so much bad faith criticism.
Yeah.
It's like with The Acolyte, with The Last Jedi, with Kathleen Kennedy, you know, I think probably the 3 most criticized things in Star Wars in the last, 5-10 years.
Yep.
There's legitimate criticism for all of them, but there's so much bad faith criticism, be it, you want to complain about the culture war, or you just want to do it for clicks on YouTube, that it really makes it tough to say, like you said, like, if I say, oh, I don't think Kathleen Kennedy is doing a good job, am I going to just be like, oh, you're just one of those guys who hates her because she's a woman, which is not the case. And I don't even necessarily think she's doing a bad job.
Mhm.
But I'm not even sure where I was going with that.
Yeah, I'll just pile on. I think you're right. I think I wouldn't say she's doing a bad job. I just think it's inconsistent and it does
Yes.
seem scattershot. And
Yes.
so um and
The,
again, just looking at this from like where we are today, when I look at Star Wars, to your point, like the things I'm looking forward to is obviously Andor in a couple weeks, and then we've got Mandalorian and Grogu next year, and then beyond that, I don't even like the slate. There's all these things that have been announced, but the
yeah.
films are. I've like there's little like I just went before we recorded this and to see what was the latest, and I've got a bunch of unnamed films, untitled
Yes.
films with directors attached, and that's it. That's all we have, and there's 8 of them, eight film/film trilogies
Yes.
that are in various states of development that we know nothing about. Granted, hopefully we'll learn something in a couple weeks about that and just the slate of Disney Plus. But I do feel like part of the issue is everything that they've done has felt very reactive. So
Hmm.
if we roll back to when Disney first got when they first bought Star Wars and they had all these plans to do the origin, like their great idea which should have told you we were in trouble at that point, maybe. But their great idea when they got the license to do Star Wars and the ability to do anything, their best idea was let's tell origin stories for characters that we already know, like Han Solo and Boba Fett and Yoda, all of whom don't need origin stories really. Like part of the Yoda's mystique is the fact that we don't know where he comes from. We don't know what his race is. You can't ruin that. So that was the rough plan at that point, and then Solo came out, and that didn't perform, and then they kind of backed away from those plans. We got the sequel trilogy. I think they got gun shy because of the Last Jedi reactions to that, right? And then the Rise of Skywalker being what it is, and then they seemed to pivot to Disney Plus, and they were going to go all in on Disney Plus, but that hasn't panned out as well either for various reasons, and it just feels like. It feels like they're making their decisions totally on what is playing in the market, I guess, which from a business standpoint, it makes sense. But it's like, I don't feel like you can't create art based on what you think the market's going to respond to. And like the Acolyte, case in point, Acolyte is in my opinion, it's mixed. Like I like what it tried to do, and in fact, the problems I have with it are not what like the internet has. Like I liked this. I liked the Space Witches. I liked that we got to see Star Wars from a different point of view, a different lens, a female lens. Like there's space lesbians. I don't care. Like it was all interesting. It's new stuff. Like to me, that was good. Where it failed for me was just kind of the story execution and just when you got to the end of the series, it felt like it was a lot of build up for nothing. And that's where I was bummed about. But at the same time, like I wanted a second season because I felt like season 1 was almost like prologue and like the good stuff was finally going to happen. And now we don't get that. And we're not going to get it because of, again, it's the reaction to Disney is reacting to like how it's being perceived in the marketplace.
I think it's funny. I rewatched The Acolyte a couple weeks ago, and when you watch it, as in, 1 or 2 sittings like I did versus the week to week, you really see the story they're going for. You see kind of the flaws in the story. Like there are a lot of things in The Acolyte where I was just like, guys, what are we doing? Like, why did you bring Ki-Adi-Mundi in here? Like, there's no reason to have him. You just got everybody riled up, and it's like, I think when that happened, I compared it to that scene in The Simpsons with Sideshow Bob stepping on the rakes. Like, everybody knows that one, know, and it was just an unforced error. And then when you got done, you're like, we really need a second season of this.
Yeah.
And, there's so much left that they could have explored. And I kind of wonder, and this is something I've pondered for a bit, could you take some of these Disney Plus series that maybe they're like, we liked it, but it didn't perform as well as we could have, and just do them as an animated series? Because one of the big things I know with The Acolyte was how expensive it was. And a lot, and they're like, we're not getting our money's worth. And, I don't know what it costs to animate an episode, but I know it's a lot cheaper than, what they were paying for The Acolyte. So I kind of wonder if that's something. But to your point earlier as well, with Disney being reactive, is, Disney as a whole has, an entirely different set of goals than George Lucas did. I mean, obviously they're both out there to make money, but, Lucas could say, I am an artist first and foremost. I have, this is my vision. Like with the, I know it's a meme at this point, but, comparing the sequel trilogy to the prequels, it's like, whatever you want to say about the prequels, there is a consistent through line. And yes, tweaks happen in between movies, the backlash to Jar Jar, he's in 2 and 3 a lot less. But there is still an overarching consistent story, I think, and largely because it came from the writing of one person, basically. It is Lucas's baby. Whereas, with the sequel trilogy, you had, J.J. Abrams, then you had Rian Johnson, then you had Disney running back to J.J. Abrams to say, make people like us again. And, you don't necessarily get that consistency. And their whole, Disney's idea is we we're a publicly traded company. We need to make money for our shareholders. We are going to figure out what we think the best money making things are, and we're going to do that. And if it's like, I'm sure the way of thinking, like you said, is Disney's like, okay, we have, Han Solo, Obi-Wan, Boba Fett. We have all these characters that we know people love. It is the risk-averse move to make a Han Solo movie versus, the Mandalorian, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Like basically a brand new character, or the Acolyte. Brand new characters, or almost all brand new characters. And I think that is a very, business oriented way of thinking. If you were to ask, I think you or I, we would probably say, oh heck yeah, let's say, pick the new characters, or take, a background character and let's give him a story, versus, do we really need the Han Solo origin story? So
Yeah.
it just, it's the age old struggle of art versus commerce.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and part of the reason that like Andor is so beloved is because it's like, it's come out of all of this turmoil within Star Wars and this battle between art and commerce, and it's like exquisite television that is in the Star Wars universe. It's everything I've always wanted to be. It's Star Wars for grown-ups that doesn't have anything to do with Jedi, that happens to be in the Star Wars universe. And like it, I hope the lesson of Andor is that you can tell good Star Wars stories that don't have anything to do with Skywalkers or anything that came before. Granted, this is a ancillary story that tees up Rogue One, which tees up A New Hope, so it's all still related. But at the same time, it's all, for the most part, it's all new characters. It's a totally different vibe from what we got like in the original trilogy, and it is yeah, it's a masterpiece of like acting and writing and story and cinematography. It's just, I love it. I can't wait for season 2. But at the same time, I'm afraid that it's going to end up being an anomaly, because it's not going to move the needle enough. And I think when I look at the future of Star Wars, I'm afraid we're going to go back to kind of what you were talking about, like the origin story, like them doubling down on let's just use the known commodities. Let's treat the characters as IP, because that's what's gonna get people in the door, being the theater or on Disney Plus. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a bummer. Like I would be, honestly, like I would be totally in for a Darth Vader series that takes place. That I'm sure you've read the Darth Vader comic series, right?
I have never gotten into the comics. I'm aware of them. Like
Oh,
I know they're very well regarded.
yeah. I've read when I read the Vader, and there's a couple other ones. I kind of got away from it, but the Vader series was really good, and I think a Disney Plus series that kind of adapted that to the screen would be awesome. And then you get the built-in nostalgia of Darth Vader, and you kind of fill in the gaps between like Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader, and then the Darth Vader we see in like the original trilogy.
Right.
That makes sense to me. I think that's cool. It's kind of unexplored ground, but you still have this character that's grounding it, that everyone knows and can show up for. So, I mean, that would be interesting to me.
That is one of those things I have thought about for years. Like, to me, that was the most obvious move in the world, is to have a Darth Vader series or a movie. Like, if they wanted to start with known characters, like why did you, instead of Solo, if you had done Vader, would things be different? And the only thing I can think of, I have two conclusions. And the main one, I think they feel like if you screw this up, you're kneecapping the franchise. Like,
Yeah.
if you screw up the Han Solo origin story, it's not great. If Book of Boba Fett's not a hit, it's great. Or not great. But you screw up the Darth Vader story, like, that is Star Wars,
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I can really think of, because Hayden Christensen is not a busy man these days. I've looked at his IMDb page before. Like, he's just living his life. So he's fine. It's not like he's on the outs with Star Wars or anything. He clearly loves doing it.
Yep.
So, I mean, the other option is maybe they just want to tell the story with the comics, but I mean, the comics are for the diehards, you
Yeah.
know. And so, yeah, like I said, I think it's their concern if they put a Vader movie or a Vader TV series out there and it is anything other than a smash hit, you're just going to be like, people are going to be like, they can't get Vader right. Why would I watch, season 4 of Mando, or why would I watch a brand new series I've never heard of?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the other side of it too is like, what does a Vader series even look like? Because I don't know what his arc looks like, but he's already fallen to the dark side, so he can
Right,
only get
yeah.
darker, right? He can only
Right.
break bad more, like, so. There's also that side of it that I know, like, as fun as it is for him to show up in Rogue One and just, slaughter a bunch of rebels, like, you can't just do that for an entire series. Like, that's going to get old.
Right.
And so there is that side of it too. I think it would be really difficult to do.
So,
but
my idea for it was you could do like a 6 to 8 episode Disney Plus series of Vader, maybe like right after Revenge of the Sith, or very shortly thereafter Revenge of the Sith, when the Empire is still like kind of in the same timeline as Andor.
mm-hmm.
And it could be Vader hears a rumor that Ahsoka is still alive and like goes looking for her, or something, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think would, you could have a story. You already know the ending. Ahsoka is going to live,
Yeah.
but you could have Vader learning how to be Vader. One of the Legends books, I'm looking at my bookshelf, I don't see it. It must be tucked behind it. It's like the Dark Lord or something like that. The Vader kind of standalone book does a good job of kind of like, he's like, oh shit, I'm like part machine now. How do I survive this?
Sure.
That's the one that covers how Vader goes to the bathroom in his suit. That was my takeaway from the book.
I don't think we need to see that on Disney Plus.
No.
But I think you're right, though. I think that would be interesting, is just because I think even at the end of Revenge of the Sith, like, he's going by Darth Vader, but he's still Anakin at that point. He's not the Darth Vader we know and fear at that point. So I think there's something there that could be interesting. But even so, I mean, that kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier, is like, can Star Wars be relevant without relying on nostalgia? Like, I feel like, to me, I think the answer is yes, because if you look at one of the most successful things Disney has done, it's obviously The Mandalorian and the Grogu characters in that series. And to me, like, that's the shining example, not Andor, but really Mandalorian, because it's set and it looks familiar. It looks like Star Wars, but it has different characters, different storyline. And granted, and this is my kind of bias showing, but that show got a lot less interesting when it started having Skywalkers and Ahsoka showing up, because it was no longer about Mandalorian and his young charge. It became about the Skywalker saga, essentially.
Right. It was setting up the Filoni verse.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I agree completely. Like, I think Mando season 1 was fantastic for the reasons you said, and you could watch it without knowing any. All you had was like a surface level knowledge of Star Wars from the original trilogy and just like existing and knowing about a little bit about pop culture, you could watch it, you can understand it, and you could enjoy it.
Yes.
My parents watched the first season of Mando and liked it, and then I think season 2, I think my dad watched it, but I think they got a little turned off because like you said, season 2, Ahsoka shows up. There's some deep cuts in there. The episode with Bill Burr where they break into the Imperial facility and like they're talking about Operation Cinder. Like, you've got to read some books to know about that.
Exactly.
That's a hardcore one, and it's I think a lot of it is you have Dave Filoni's like, oh, I've got this world, I can bring on all these characters I love, like Ahsoka's his baby. And, like, I can't knock him because if I was in his position, I'd probably be doing the same thing. But it's like, you don't always have to tie everything together. Like, you can have existing standalone stories and have them work well. And, I think, people will respond to that. I mean, like the first season of Mando, Andor, I think Andor is going to be interesting because I remember I was looking at the streaming numbers for something I was writing, and it was a critical hit, but it really wasn't like a streaming hit. However you
Yeah.
want to define a streaming hit. I mean, they all hide their numbers, but I don't know. I mean, to go back to kind of what you said earlier, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with season 2 of Andor, and like where does that take us? Like, is this going to be the last Star Wars show on TV ever? Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. It's I just saw the numbers to produce or create season 2. It was almost 300 million, which puts it above like the cost of the most expensive sequel trilogy film. And
yeah, I mean, that's like the LA Dodgers payroll these days.
yeah. And it's the economics of streamers are a bit funny. It all feels like kind of monopoly money at some level. But at the end of the day, like, it only works if people are signing up and spending money to watch your service. And I don't know how you can quantify Andor's giving you $300 million of value. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
especially if you put that 300 million in a theater, you can see, okay, we made this much out of that, specifically out of that project, versus we don't know exactly who signed. I mean, maybe they can tie it back to signups, but I don't know if they can.
I mean, if I've had Disney Plus streaming for a year and I watch Andor, are they going to count that? I mean, they're obviously counting it as a win as I watched it, but it's like, well, I already had Disney Plus. Like, you're not getting more money out of me. And I mean, Hollywood math is not real math anyway.
Sure.
They can, at least with movies, like, you can make a movie profitable, you can make a movie unprofitable. It just depends on how you want to count everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you were saying something earlier about the Filoni of it all. I have very mixed feelings on Filoni because I think he has very narrow lane, and then but like one of his favorite things is kind of to tie everything together. And I think you can see, like, specifically in The Mandalorian, you can see the point where he started to get more heavily involved, because initially it was more of a Favreau thing. Season 1 was very Favreau. Season 2, Filoni starts getting more heavily involved, and by season 3, it's no longer the show that I signed up for. It's something different. It's something that I don't really like. It feels very cartoony in a way that so, like, I don't generally watch a lot of cartoons. Like, sometimes I do. It has to be special. Like, I watch a lot of the Star Wars ones, but the thing that I always get turned off on is a lot of cartoons. There's just a weightlessness to them where like, in terms of, like, literally, like, people do things that they couldn't really do in real life, as far as like jumping and stuff. But more so, like, the story, it always feels like, not always, some, like, Rebels and things like that, they do a great job with that. But a lot of times, animated things, the stories, the plots, the characters, there's just a level of artificiality to it where it's like, this doesn't feel right to me. This doesn't feel genuine, is maybe the word I'm looking for. And that's kind of what happened with season 3 of Mandalorian. It was no longer grounded in these two characters. It was about something they really had no business being involved in. And it all felt just forced to get to, like you said, the Filoni-verse, like, movie. Like, this, it all felt just forced to get to this endpoint that they've kind of put on a board somewhere. And it just no longer felt like emotionally genuine to me. And that's really when I start checking out. Like, even season 2, I wasn't loving. Like, I didn't love that Luke shows up at the end to save the day, because that felt like a big cheat, honestly. But at the same time, there was points in season 2 that were really moving, and that they were earned, like the when Grogu and Mando say goodbye, which it seems like it's going to be forever or for a long time, and then it's just kind of hand waved in the Book of Boba Fett, and they're back together.
Yeah, that maybe you could pick that as like the first big misstep for Disney Plus. Is the Book of Boba Fett being season 2.5, or 3 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett being season 2.5. Because yeah, if you were like, oh, I like that Mando show, I'm gonna wait for season 3, and then you'd be like, wait, why is Grogu back? Like, what are they doing? And
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing, and I thought about this earlier, is we'll never really know how COVID and how the strikes, what
Sure.
those did. I mean, maybe people who are more in touch than me know, obviously, but that you had 2 really big disruptions, and this is what you had 3 years between season 1 and 2 of Mando, I think, 2019 to 2022. And so
That sounds right. Yeah.
I mean that I think that is one of the other things that Star Wars is having a problem with is just the time in between, everything. I mean, Andor is what, 2022. Ahsoka was 2023, and maybe there'll be season 2 next year. So I think if you want to get new people interested, you can do that with a show, but then you've got to keep their interest.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like, oh, I really liked this Andor story, I can't wait for more of it. Well, you got to wait 3+ years. And I mean, there's a lot of distractions out there for people, and it's easy to be like, oh, I guess I'll never get to Andor. I'm going to go, watch Batman, or I'm going to go get into the MCU, whatever it is you want to do. One of the things I write about quite a bit, not quite a bit, but once a year is our neighborhood is very busy for trick-or-treating, and I kind of use the kids in costumes as like, where is Star Wars in the zeitgeist?
Mm-hmm.
And just judging by the number of costumes versus like the superhero stuff or the video game stuff, like, it's not good.
Yeah.
I see a lot more Spider-Man, I see a lot more Marios, I see a lot more Batman, or the other assorted Marvel characters. I think this last year was 7 Star Wars costumes out of, I don't know how many kids came to my house, but a lot.
Yeah. And I'm sure those 7 kids, they probably were, quote unquote, force fed Star Wars by their parents because their
Right.
parents love it, right? I mean, that's how it
Yes.
happens. We hand it down. But I do, yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I think the other thing, I don't know this for sure, but it feels accurate to me that whether it was a mandate from Disney or not, it does feel like part of what was going on with Star Wars was they were looking across the aisle at their sister studio at Marvel and seeing how the Marvel formula, where you have everything's interconnected and you've got, the series that are setting up the films and vice versa. And it's like, oh, well, let's do that with Star Wars. Why not? And it does make sense. And you can see what specifically with Mando, like that intense. Like, I think that's very clearly that was the plan, is like the Cara Dune series, which was canceled, like that was going to be tied in. And, you got the Book of Boba Fett, you got Mando, and then this is all leading to eventually the Ahsoka series and then the films. It does feel like they're trying to kind of borrow some of the Marvel magic, which I don't have a problem with, but they are different things. And I think treating Star Wars like Marvel, you're losing sight of what makes Star Wars special. And yeah, I honestly, it's just, the same thing when I did the Marvel State of the Union, and now we're doing the Star Wars one. But my feeling on this is the same. It's like, just tell good stories. Like, I don't care if they connect or they don't. Just tell good stories. Make the main thing. And then if things develop like organically or not, like, that's cool. But I feel like when you're starting these projects with a end goal already in mind, like, you're already kind of defeating yourself versus just starting with, like, who are these characters? What is their situation? Why is this important? And like, yeah, like when I look at, let's just run down just real quick. Well, I guess we don't even have anything. I was going to run down a list of projects that we know that are in the pipeline, but we know literally nothing about them.
No, I mean, yeah, what's there? There's the Rey movie, which seems likely to happen.
Yeah, I'll just run down the list. So we got the Mandalorian and Grogu film, which I'll be honest,
I'm gonna go see it.
I'm gonna go see it, but it's like, why? Why is this not season 4? what is this doing that the Dave Filoni film's not going to do? It's kind of weird. The name of it itself is just weird.
I
Like I don't know how to read that movie.
the one thing I wonder if it's going to be like is that like the very first Clone Wars movie where they basically took like a 4-episode arc of from the Clone Wars cartoon and turned it into a movie. Like I kind of wonder if that's what Mando and Grogu is going to be, where it's going to be like a standalone episode or a couple standalone episodes stretched into a movie.
Yeah, I mean that definitely could be. I think that makes sense, and it's kind of funny because like Andor is doing the opposite, where season 2 of Andor, they're releasing 3 episodes a week in these 3-week chunks for 4 weeks, and they're essentially going to be like mini movies. So they're trying all kinds of different things.
There was I saw an interview with Tony Gilroy, who basically, when he was asked about that, he just kind of said, I feel bad for the podcasters.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, exactly. No, Tony, thanks. Yeah. Thanks for helping me out here.
So that's the one project that we have a name for. We have a date. It's coming out May 2026, so just over a year from now. And then the rest of these are just big question marks. So Simon Kinberg has a trilogy, possibly episodes 10 through 12, which then that one, if you're calling it episodes, then that means it's tying back to the Skywalker saga somehow. Yep. It's a continuation. Like, that's the way I read it.
I kind of think so too. I mean, I know when it was announced, it was, yes, it's episodes 10 through 12. No, it's not episodes 10 through 12. But I think you're right. If you're calling it episodes, it is probably going to be 10 through 12 of them.
Right. And if that's the case, then clearly Rey has to be involved, which then there's also a Rey single film in development, which I don't see how those two marry up. Like, it seems to me like the logical thing is you just have the trilogy, but supposedly both of those are in production, the trilogy and then a Rey standalone film. I don't know how to read the tea leaves on that. There's go ahead.
I was going to say, I know with the Rey film, like they're on their 3rd or 4th writer, but that one at least, and I know I've seen some comments from Daisy Ridley, like, yeah, this is going along, versus the trilogy is just like, oh yeah, we're announcing this, we'll see. So if I were to like put odds on it, I mean, it seems pretty likely to me the Rey movie will happen, and maybe they'll use that as a bridge to like episodes 10 through 12. Like, if you don't come out with episodes 10 through 12 until, I don't know, 2030, 2028 to 2030 at the earliest, like, how old's Daisy Ridley at that point? I don't know. But,
yeah,
I think it would be if that's the path they want to take, it would be a good move to kind of keep Rey, who they clearly want to be like, the new main character, keep her, I don't know, at the forefront of fans' minds, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm totally in for it. I hope Palpatine doesn't show up again.
He might. You never know.
He might.
Grandpa Palpy doesn't, maybe he'll just get a cameo.
Yeah, jeez. All right, so then we've got James Mangold has a film. It's he pitched it as like a biblical epic about the origins of the Force. So this is like the origin of all origin stories.
Right. I mean, I guess if you're doing that, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Exactly. Like the premise is a little hinky to me, but he's taking a big swing, and I like that. It's like, this is the thing. Like, Star Wars is set in a galaxy a long time ago, far, far away. Let's spread out a little bit. Let's get away from this same 50-year window. Yes. And yeah, I like that they're doing that with this one. Dave Filoni has his film, which is the culmination of the Mandoverse. So it's going to be like the Mando and the Ahsoka. We're going to see Thrawn, I'm sure, and it's going to all go down on the. It's kind of an interesting strategy to set up all these stories in Disney Plus and then to release a film that concludes them.
Yeah,
kind of an interesting strategy, because you're going to assume people are going to go to the movie that haven't seen any of the shows, and therefore aren't going to like know who these characters are or why they're fighting this blue-faced guy.
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious to see what the numbers of people who would be like, I haven't watched any shows. I'm going to go see what this is about.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
have I
go
have to
ahead.
imagine it would be low, but I do think there would be people that would just go because it's a Star Wars
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
We've got Taika Waititi as a film.
I like him. Like I like a lot of his stuff, but if this ever happens, I'm gonna be shocked.
I agree. I don't think it's probably going to happen. There's a Sean Levy film that takes place post Rise of Skywalker, and Ryan Gosling is attached. But other than that, like, there's no real information on it at this point. But this was kind of a newer development. Like some of these other
Yes,
ones, like the Taika Waititi one, I swear was like announced at least like 8 years ago.
it sure feels like it.
Yeah, the Waititi. So the Sean Levy one, though, I think was only maybe 3 to 6 months ago because it's pretty recent.
Yeah, and the Ryan Gosling being part of it, I think, is like within the last, I don't
Yeah.
know, end of the year, early this year.
Yep.
I mean, I guess if you're throwing out that Ryan Gosling's in there, you probably feel pretty good it's gonna happen.
That's kind of how I read it. Like if you're actually attaching a leading actor, it feels like more likely to happen than some of
Yeah,
these which feel like vaporware.
yeah. I mean, it's one thing if you're saying, "Oh, we're swapping writers around," and nobody knows who any of these writers are unless you're really in the weeds. Versus, if you say, "Oh, hey, Ryan Gosling movie," people are really like, "Oh yeah, that dude. All right, yeah, cool, I'm in."
Yeah, exactly. Then we have Lando, which was originally a film, then it was a Disney Plus series. Now apparently it's a film again. Um, don't know if it's going to happen, but Donald Glover is attached. He's going to reprise the role. He's writing it. So I hope it happens because Lando was one of the best parts of the Solo
Oh,
movie. So
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, this is one that I definitely hope happens. You
yep.
know, the guy who was supposed to do it originally, shoot, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. Justin Simeon is on Substack now.
Oh, is he?
Yes, wonder if he'd give us all the dirt about how Disney maybe did him dirty. Probably
Yeah,
not.
probably not. He's probably under NDA, but
Yeah.
that's interesting. Then we got the Ryan Johnson trilogy, which was announced like right after The Last Jedi. I don't even know if The Last Jedi had been released yet when they announced that he was going to do a new trilogy about new characters in an unexplored corner of the lore, which
I
frankly
mean,
checks all my boxes. Like, yes,
right.
let's do that.
Yeah, I would love to see this one, but yeah, I don't know. This one and the Watiti movie are going to happen at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Probably in a better timeline than the one we're in. And then the last one that still like may happen is Rogue Squadron, which again was one that had been shelved, but apparently is in development again. So it's kind of like the Watiti and the Ryan Johnson
Yeah.
ones. Like I don't know if these are gonna happen or not, but they're still, based on everything I've like found online, they haven't actually been canceled yet.
And it seems like they really don't, for the most part, they don't cancel stuff. It just kind of quietly goes away.
Right? They just wait for people to stop talking about it.
Yeah. And then people say, "Oh, wait, Rangers of the New Republic, was that a real thing or did I just make it up?"
Yeah. Yeah. So of all those that I just listed, is there one that jumps out to you as like what are you most excited about the possibility of?
Out of the ones that I think are actually possible, I actually think the Sean Levy one, the kind of origin stories of the Force.
As James Mangold.
That's yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that one. I think that would be. I think that's a cool idea. Like, it gets away from basically any timeline that we know,
Mhm.
and you have a chance to, I don't know, create new characters however you want. I guess subject to Disney's approval, but you can kind of go wherever you want. You're not tied into this story of, oh, Luke has to, be alive for this, or Ahsoka has to be alive for that. You can kind of do whatever you want. So I would be excited to see a just a completely new story where you can kind of more or less do whatever you want.
Yep. Yeah. I'm that exactly. That's all I want for Star Wars from Star Wars or for Star Wars is like something new. Like I'm dying for something new. And because of the story, again, it takes place in a huge galaxy, limitless possibilities of characters and conflicts, and just like, yeah, give us something new. And yeah, I
Yeah,
hope it happens.
I hope it does too. I'm just kind of like, I'm looking at my list of books, and I'm like, or my books on the shelf. I'm like, is there anything there that I really want to see?
You want to see the Vong on film?
I'm kind of surprised they haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's the in case of emergency break glass button.
Sure.
No, I mean, give me
Well, I the obvious answer is KOTOR, right? Knights of the Old
yes. Oh
Republic.
God, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
That should go without saying.
Yes. That's the
No, I
obvious
mean,
answer.
the obvious answer for me is the Darth Jar Jar series. Like, Disney, make it, you cowards.
Yeah. I don't think we'll get that. Isn't there a Lego short though or something?
The latest Lego movie. Oh geez, I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but it's basically like, all the universes get switched up. So like, you have like Geonosis and Jedi and Darth Jar Jar and like, Vader and Palpatine are on the light side and just all that
Oh,
kind of
jeez.
stuff. Yeah, God, I forget. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but it's like the latest Star Wars Lego, and it's fun. I mean,
Okay.
that was definitely one of those where they threw that out to the fans, like, look, here's Darth Jar Jar. Would you guys just please shut up about it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it originally started kind of as a meme. I know there.
Yeah.
I was. I don't know if I was there like on Reddit when it kind of first took shape, but I found it shortly after, and like I was bought in. Like he
Yeah.
came with the receipts, and it's like it does make sense.
It does make sense. Like, it seems like the type of thing, who knows? Uncle George will never tell us,
Sure.
and but it kind of it is the type of thing that he would like to do. Like, it's kind of, that he always says Star Wars echoes or Star Wars rhymes. Like, it's the echo of Yoda, but on the dark side.
On the dark side, yep.
Kind of the trickster who, you just think this guy's a goof or is just some little weird dude. And oh wait, you're a really powerful Jedi.
Yep. Let's see here. I think we've covered a lot of the ground I had. Just as we start to wrap up, I guess. Do you? What would you do? Like if you could, if Kathleen Kennedy called you and said, "Jeff, I've been reading your newsletter. I like the cut of your jib. I'm going to step down. I'm naming you as my successor." Like, what would you do? Like, how would you write the ship? Does the ship need to be righted? I guess is the first question. And like, what would you focus on?
That's a really good question because I would just assume that it was you calling me and pranking me, but you've got to strike the balance between nostalgia and moving forward. You can't just focus on nostalgia. People are going to get bored. You're not going to be able to you're going to have a tougher time attracting new fans. You can't just focus, we talk about, we want to see these brand new stories because everything is old to us. Like, and it's not that we don't want more Skywalkers. It's not that we don't want, a 4th season of Mando or, whatever it is, but it's, we always want something new. I think that's kind of universal for Star Wars fans is we're always like, okay, what is the next story to tell? Like, what could we, take this background character and turn him or her into? So I think what I would do, I would probably try to strike a balance there. I would continue the Skywalker saga. I don't know if I would love it, but I would continue it because I think that's your bread and butter. I mean, regardless of what you say, regardless of what, dorks like us who want to see 8 episodes about a gonk droid think, like a Skywalker movie is going to get butts in the seats.
Yep.
And then for streaming, I would probably I would use it as a combination to tell minor stories like, I'm trying to think what would be good. Like continue Rebels. Like I would play in a sandbox where people know it's familiar, but I would introduce new characters there. And the other thing I would do is I would use animation a lot more, I think, as a cost-effective way to, like I said, like season 2 of The Acolyte in animation. I think stuff where, maybe it wasn't as well received as it could have been, or maybe it wasn't profitable, or whatever it was. I mean, there is you look online, like there are a lot of people who do want season 2 of The Acolyte.
Yeah.
And I think
Yep.
there are probably more people who would like season 2 of The Acolyte than, the people complaining about the lesbian space witches. Like, that's a loud voice, but I think they're a loud minority. So I would use animation as a way to continue the stories. And if I were in charge, you're getting that 8-episode Darth Jar Jar series, whether you want it or not.
Now, is that animated or is that live action?
Abed Best seems like he's pretty cool these days. So I would offer it to him first. I'd be like, you want to put the suit back on? We'll do it live action. If he says no, we'll go animated.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, what you said makes a lot of sense to me. I think the idea of if you need to feed Disney Plus content, using animation to do that makes a lot of sense. It's cost effective, and I think when you make something live action, it seems like it has to be like the degree of canon. I guess I mean all Star Wars is canon basically, but at the same time, because there's less of live action, it feels like it is more applicable or it has a higher weight to canon versus something that's animated. Because if for no other reason than a lot of people aren't going to watch the animated stuff, or there's more of it, like the Clone Wars series, like I watched it, but like I couldn't tell you a lot of the storylines at this point because there's so many of them and they blend together. But like there's some crazy stuff that happens that probably shouldn't be canon.
The one Clone Wars I always think about is there was, I don't know if it was an episode or 2 episodes or whatever, but Jar Jar had a girlfriend. And I always think about that one. I don't know why. I don't know why that lives rent-free in my head. I don't know what that says about me. But
you're a Jar Jar stan.
All these years, who knew I'd come around?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, though. I think lean into the animated stuff and use that. And in fact, you could use the animated stuff to be a springboard to your live action. And we even saw that with Disney Plus, where they with the Book of Boba Fett, like we got Cad Bane and we got Ahsoka, and we got them as live action characters, and it was awesome. Like those were some of the best developments of the Disney Plus experience, has been seeing these animated characters brought to life, like literally. Like you could totally do that where you're just springboarding one thing to the next, and maybe, like you said, you're playing in your sandbox with Rebels or whatever, like a live action show possibly, and then maybe you take some of those characters and bring those into films where it makes sense.
I think also there's just, when you're doing live action, the stakes are higher, if for no other reason than the amount of money you're spending. But like you said, I mean, more people are going to watch, Andor than are going to watch The Bad Batch. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but that seems pretty likely that there is, a contingent of people who they're going to watch the live action stuff, or they're going to be like, oh, the cartoons, and I'm not going to bother with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you could almost do it like treat the cartoons as like the minor leagues. If you get a good reaction to a character, a good reaction to a storyline or something, you can be like, okay, we're going to write around this, and we're going to turn this into a live action one. Yeah, I like that idea. Occasionally I have good ones.
That's a great idea. You've got, hey, if I had a say in it, you'd have the job today.
I appreciate that.
I don't have Kathleen's contact information yet.
I'll check my subscriber list. Maybe she's in there under like a burner email.
Hey, if we start to see Darth Jar Jar material show up on Disney Plus, we'll know that they're listening.
I feel like Dave Filoni would do Darth Jar Jar if he could get away with it.
I think he would. He definitely seems like he would find that fun and funny, and kind of a nod to the fans. Like he's yet to met. I mean, I love Filoni in some ways, but he does love fan service a little too much for my taste. So I think if he had a chance to throw it in there, I think he would.
Yeah, it's almost like, I think, we said earlier, it's almost like he's never met an idea in Star Wars he doesn't like, which I love.
Yeah.
Like, I would much rather have somebody be like, yes, I want to do everything, versus, no, we're doing Rey and that's it. Call me when the Rey movie is done, then we'll do something else.
Yeah, exactly. You want enthusiasm because, I mean, we're talking about this stuff because Star Wars means something to us. We love it. Like it means a lot to us. Like it's part of my identity, my own origin story. So I think, yeah, we just want be better, Star Wars.
Yes, we don't criticize from a place of we criticize from a place of love. Like, I
Absolutely.
don't do this because, and I try to stay, and I think you're the same way, where I try to stay positive with what I write about Star Wars. Like, I
Mhm.
would much rather focus on the things that I find fun or the things that are entertaining versus get bogged down in like, oh, lesbian space witches mean the end of the world, or
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy has ruined everything, or oh, I found a continuality error, like this sucks. Like, that's not fun. Those people aren't
No.
having fun. Like,
No.
this is, at the end of the day, like, Star Wars is inherently pretty silly. And it's
Mhm.
something that we should be able to look at as, we have these crazy space wizards. They're going around having adventures. This should be an escape from real life and something we all enjoy. And if all you want to do is focus on the negative, like, why are you doing this? Just have some fun with it.
Absolutely. Yep. I couldn't have said it better myself. That seems like that's a great point to end this on, Jeff. Way to wrap it up. So I guess just in closing, I'll mention Jeff's newsletter again, Death Star Human Resources Department. It's on Substack. Check it out. He publishes every Friday, and he covers the gamut of like new Star Wars news, Star Wars lore. He's doing. Are you still reading the Vong series right now?
I'm so close to being done. I've got yes, I'm reading the new Jedi Order series, all 19 books. I just finished book 17 last night. So, like, my goal was to read it all in a year. Then my goal was to be done by this February. Now my goal is to be done by April.
Okay. Well, you're getting there. It is a
Almost
long
there.
series. I
It
read through it
is.
when it came out. It is a bit of a trek at some point. But yeah, so he's bringing book reviews, and then even he one of my favorite parts of the newsletter is when your wife basically dunks on you for being a Star Wars nerd.
Yeah, I think I've got one coming up. She said something recently where I was just like, oh, jeez. I mean, she acts like she's not interested, but every once in a while she'll say something and it's like, oh, you're paying attention.
You're paying attention. Yep, exactly. You got her. Absolutely. All right, Jeff. Thank you, my friend.
All right, thanks a lot for having me, Eric. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We'll do this. Hey, I think we should maybe reconvene after Celebration.
I think so. We'll have a little Andor to talk about, a little Celebration to talk about.
That sounds good. All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.